I was hoping to discuss CRT this week because frankly it's racist propaganda and it needs as much public scrutiny as possible. And boy is it getting it at the moment, which is awesome. But then NASA had to go full woke on us on Tuesday with the uploading of a video supporting the Biden administration's equity agenda. So that's what we're going to speak out against today by speaking up for equality. More specifically, equal opportunity, because the fact is we're not all equal. Some people are smarter, more motivated, or just more virtuous than others. First, though, it's important that we define our terms, especially since the left is notorious for word games because, changing terms and definitions is what you have to do when your arguments are that terrible. In this video, NASA astronauts mention both equity and equal opportunity.
We're on a mission of equity, launching opportunity.
Equal opportunity to challenge and inspire.
Ironically, that's both non-specific and convoluted at the same time. Equity and equal of opportunity are not the same thing. Anyone informed and honest will tell you that. And since NASA's video is titled Mission Equity, it leads me to believe they don't know what they're talking about. But they were told to do this by higher-ups in the administration who have a more nefarious agenda. This assumption of mine was proven correct, as I will soon show you. Until relatively recently, most people didn't think of equity as a social construct. It was most often used purely in economics, meaning the amount of money shareholders would receive if all assets of a company were liquidated and all debts paid off. That's not what we're talking about for the purpose of this video. We're addressing equity in the context of how progressives are currently using the term to fight what they perceive as injustices or unfairness concerning careers or income. Bottom line, equity means equal outcome, not equal opportunity, as the video suggests. Equal outcome is the phrase the left used to use, but again, their Marxist arguments failed, so they abandoned it in exchange for the more ambiguous word equity. And in its simplest form, equity means entitlements, but not for everyone. Equity is designed to protect power, to keep those with power in power.
The historical data on equity are absolutely clear. The societies that have tried to aim at equity are the terrible communistic societies of the 20th century, and they were so unbelievably murderous and counterproductive that it beggars the imagination. And so I can't even believe we have a conversation about equity because it's such a pathological idea. It's completely invalidated by the historical data.
Equality, however, challenges power. And more specifically than that, equal opportunity is fairness without artificial barriers or preferences, of which equity has both. Again, these terms, equity and equal opportunity, although both used in this NASA video, do not complement each other.
So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests, everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place. Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
Equal opportunity would have it that nobody is discriminated against because of the color of their skin or sex or whatever, and nobody is propped up and given advantages because of those things either. People are free to walk their own path for as long or as far as they want without government getting in the way by either directly throwing obstacles at them or helping out their competition. Everyone has the opportunity to become, say, an astronaut or a medical doctor, like Johnny here. He's both. Oh, and a Navy SEAL. This golden child here making the rest of us look like lazy bitches. But obviously everyone won't be an astronaut or a doctor or a SEAL. Different people want to be different things, and not everyone is physically fit enough to be some of these things. Nor in a functioning society can everyone do the same thing. So equal opportunity is merit based on the content in one's character, intelligence, or the skills they have acquired through the time and effort they put into achieving such aspirations. These things, not one's ethnicity or sex, is what gives them an edge over the competition. And thank God for it. I don't know about you, but I would hate to have a doctor that has a medical license just because he has more or less melanin in his skin. I'd prefer to have the most qualified and gentle doc putting his finger in me. It would also be not good if some oversensitive weakling received a SEAL trident and an M4 and then was told to go defend America because the standards were lowered for them in training. And to do that would be a perfect example of equity. And by the way, I definitely don't hear any feminists who push so hard to open up these spec ops programs advocating for opening up the draft to them as well. And I think the lawyer wife told me a little bit ago that the Supreme Court just refused to hear the case this week. It remains an undeniable fact that both genders do have their own strengths and weaknesses. To deny that is to deny science, which is also why biological men should not compete in women's sports. You would think the left would agree since they care so much about fairness and women's rights. But I guess they're cool with men who claim to be women stealing their trophies and beating the shit out of them in the octagon. All in the name of political correctness. Just because you call it political correctness doesn't mean you're correct. Again, it's word games. Martin Luther King Jr. said during his I Have a Dream speech,
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
He was a warrior for equality, not equity, believing that America should practice what it preached in his founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Equity, or equal outcome, would be the opposite of what MLK Jr. wanted, judging people on the color of their skin and assuming whites and Asians are privileged, or assuming blacks and browns need special assistance in order to succeed. Those of us with the ability to reason call that racism. Those advocating for equity also assume everyone wants to get to the same place. But in reality, everyone is on their own journey. They have their own mountain to climb, their own path to walk. For example, statistics show that more women than men choose jobs that allow them to spend more time at home with family, or leave the workplace entirely to raise children. So how do Marxist bureaucrats plan on managing all these different aspirations? We'll get back to that later. As I mentioned earlier, equity comes with both artificial barriers and preferences, meaning in this system, limits are placed on the successful group and how much they can achieve, while underachieving or underperforming groups are given a handicap, to use a golf reference. This is communism, and history shows us time and time again that it stunts the growth of innovation and real societal progress, while completely abolishing personal liberties. Oh, and yeah, it also keeps the tyrannical in power while killing lots and lots of people.
What the people who are agitating for equality of outcome don't understand is that you have to cede so much power to the authorities, to the government, in order to ensure equality of outcome that a tyranny is inevitable.
Advocates for modern progressive theory want this. They aim to divide our nation by labeling all whites and anyone successful as oppressors and all others as the oppressed. This idea of equity is how they're achieving their agenda. Affirmative action, the policy of favoring new hires or college students of an ethnic minority for the sake of skin-deep diversity in the workplace or on campus, is an example of an equity-driven handicap, while at the same time is also an example of inequality. Now, a second ago I mentioned how the left places limits on successful groups and gives advantages to underperforming groups, instead of successful person or underperforming person. Because understand, with equity, you have to lump people into categories. Because as I said earlier, as individuals, we're definitely not equal, nor will we ever be. So to get around this, the Chinese Communist Party groups people by class. Here in the States, the left wants to do it by race. It's not about individuals or individual liberties and freedoms. It's about collectivism to these communists. And for them, it has to be that way. Otherwise, to determine who gets what advantage or disadvantage would be impossible. People on an individual level are already really diverse. Intelligence alone is a huge spectrum. Add to that emotion, energy levels, and creativity. There's a ton of traits that would have to be considered for genuine equity to work. And so because these Marxists want to decide who gets a leg up and who gets a boot to the face based on race or sex or whatever the criteria is, there's no reason to even assume that equity or equal outcome can be achieved. It's just too broad. Too much social engineering is required.
You have to use so much social force in order to make that occur that the consequences, the negative consequences, will far outweigh the benefits.
But the biggest problem of equity, other than that it's racist, is that it grants government even more power than it already has. I mean, who else would determine what's fair? Bureaucrats like Biden and Harris get to decide who gets what and what mountain we're all climbing, yet there's nothing equitable about them receiving even more power to make those decisions. Not to mention that Marxism is a failed doctrine, and the fact that some of those at NASA don't know that or care is pretty sad. But I'll give the agency and their employees and their astronauts the benefit of the doubt and assume that these geniuses, while competent at science and engineering, just don't know what they're talking about when it comes to equity. If they knew how harmful it is, I'd hope that they'd whistle-blow the shit out of it like Captain Lohmeyer did in the Space Force, instead of agreeing to do this video. I get that it's your chance to go to space, but advocating for communism isn't the right stuff. I do get emails from time to time from NASA employees, both past and present, and every one of them I've written and spoken to are good peeps and wouldn't agree with such an un-American policy as equity. But I guess NASA is run by far-left progressive Marxists these days, under the Biden-Harris regime. The day he was inaugurated, Biden signed Executive Order 13985, which made equity mandatory among all federal government agencies. So there you go, that's the reason NASA put this video out. The question is, will the agency and the country survive it? I want to end this video with some helpful advice. While we all want to be treated fairly, and we should be, we'd also be much better off and happier if we just took the time to appreciate what we do have, instead of being envious of what other people have. Sure, I would love to have Bill Gates' money. who is a far left individual, by the way. But I know that I didn't create what he created. Same goes with Elon, who gets a ton of hate from the ainers, because they ain't got what he got and they're all jelly. I chose a different path. I chose to join the military out of college for $22,000 a year with benefits, and then much later chose to teach high school science for $25,000 a year plus no benefits. But I didn't complain or go on strike like some of my entitled socialist colleagues did around the country at the same time, with their teachers' unions, keeping students out of the classroom and setting a poor example for those they're supposed to be educating. And even though I lived paycheck to paycheck for most of my adult life, I always knew that I had a job that at least paid me. And if my position in life ever really bothered me, if my main focus ever shifted from educating the next generation to my own wants and needs, I knew it was on me and not the government to make those changes happen. And now here I am. I've been blessed to broaden the walls of my classroom to the entire world. And yeah, I'm making more money now. The fact remains, most of us Americans don't live in a cave with no Wi-Fi. We have a roof over our head, a flat screen TV, and a talking box that orders pizza for us when we hungry. Even the poorest among us have these things. And an Xbox. So if we think about that and get some proper perspective, maybe we can focus less on how we feel cheated and instead turn our attention to, say, the homeless suffering from addiction, or the puppy at the local animal shelter who needs a family. Life's just too short to be green with envy. And yeah, it's even shorter if you live in a Marxist country. Thanks for watching. Be sure to share this video with your friends and family. God bless and Godspeed.